Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. My name is Richard Fulmer, and this is the channel where we discuss all things rock related, whether it's in the realms of classic rock, blues rock, metal, progressive rock, jazz rock fusion sometimes. That's pretty much what I cover here on this channel. And for the past few weeks, we've been looking at the lesser known live albums that you might want to check out. And today's album is by a band that I think is still going today. Obviously, over the years, there have been many lineup changes because I think they've been going since the early 70s. Many lineup changes right from the beginning. And as I say, I think they're still going with at least one of these sort of classic lineups still in the band. So the album and the band we're talking about, first of all, the band is called Renaissance. And the album we're going to be chatting about is live at Carnegie Hall, that famous venue for many bands and many artists. So like I said, these guys were started, I think, in the early 70s. Their first two albums had a very different lineup. It was formed by Keith Relf and Jim McCarty. Those names may ring a bell. They were both part of the Yardbirds. Of course, the Yardbirds also had Jimmy Page, and they had Jeff Beck, and they had Eric Clapton. Yeah, it was a band that spawned so many other bands. So Renaissance is one of those bands. I think Armageddon was another one, and there were a few others. So before this live album, this particular lineup had done about four or five studio albums. And let me just show you the albums that came out before this live album. Some of these you may recognize. Their style, first of all. What style did Renaissance play? Well, I suppose you could call it prog rock, but it had a lot of leanings toward classical music. A lot of the songs are very epic, bombastic, if you like, different parts to them, quite involved, but they all were anchored by the incredible vocals of the main vocalist, who wasn't on the first two albums, but when she joined, I think she was the game changer for this band, a lady by the name of Annie Haslam, who I think is the only sort of classic lineup person left in the band, if they are still touring. I'm not quite sure. So anyway, these are some of the albums that came out before. This one is called Turn of the Card by Renaissance. You can see them at the back. That's Annie Haslam. Where's Annie Haslam? There she is, over there. I'll tell you about the rest of the guys in the band just now when we go through the live album. So this would be the first album that she appears on, or this particular lineup appears on, because almost the entire lineup of the first two albums was changed. The name was kept the same, but total different lineup. So that would be the first one of the new lineup, Prologue. And this album here is probably my favorite Renaissance. And this one is called Ashes Are Burning. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this came out in 72 or 73. Boy, this writing is so small here. 73. Oh, my fading eyesight. Fading along with everything else. Let's see if I can... Yeah, so that's Annie Haslam over there. Such an amazing voice. It's almost ethereal sometimes, otherworldly. She can hit these incredible notes. Almost like an early version of, say, Kate Bush. That kind of, maybe not that kind of style, but you know where I'm going with her. Her voice is just, very different. You know, when you talk about great female vocalists, you always mention like the Ann Wilson and Joni Mitchell or whatever, but very few people seem to mention Annie Haslam's name. And I mean, she had an incredible voice. In fact, her voice is still pretty strong today. Saw a clip of her quite recently, or one of her recent concerts. She still got it. So that was Ashes Are Burning. Right, so let's go on to the actual album that we want to chat about, live at Carnegie Hall. Time for some coffee. So the Carnegie Hall is pretty much a venue that most bands aspired to. You know, that was where you had to go if you really made it, if you were at Carnegie Hall. So there's some great shots of the band live in the middle there. There's Annie Haslam there. I'll tell you the other guys just now, like I mentioned. Some cool shots. So who else is in the band? John Tout on keyboards, vocals. So he did some backing vocals. Annie Haslam on lead vocals. John Camp on bass pedals and vocals. Brilliant bassist. And I'll tell you why in a second. He played the same Rickenbacker bass as Chris Squire from Yes. Very similar style, almost the same sound to his bass as Chris Squire's. Obviously, both bands were pretty big in the early 70s. Terence Sullivan on drums, percussion, and vocals, and Michael Dunford on acoustic guitars and vocals. So there you'll notice there's no electric guitar in this band. In fact, I think they only use electric guitar on one or two of their tracks in some of their albums. They're pretty much mostly acoustic. And that's why you need a bass guitarist that could fill in those gaps where your electric lead would normally be. And John Camp did a great... he played his bass almost like a lead guitar. Really very proficient. Recorded at Carnegie Hall June the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 1975 by Record Plant, New York. So they've taken different tracks from different evenings. Mixed at Delane Leas, Wembley in England. See if there's anything else. Produced by the band. Plus, they had an orchestra backing them. Now, this band's music is kind of made for orchestras because of the sort of classical element to some of their music. So here they had the New York Philharmonic playing along with them. And the sound is amazing. Really well produced. A lot of crowd interaction as well. Annie Haslam as a vocalist was brilliant, but she wasn't a vocalist who ran around the stage and wasn't that kind of music. So she pretty much just stood in one spot, but boy, the voice was just something else. Do yourselves a favor and check out, there's a couple of live concerts of Renaissance. I think one at Golders Green in the UK in 1977, which is available on YouTube. Really worth checking out if you want to get an idea of what they sounded like live. So the tracks on here are Prologue, and these are quite lengthy tracks, by the way, because some of them have got different parts to them. Prologue, Ocean Gypsy, that's 7 minutes long, and Can You Understand, that's 10 minutes and 47 seconds. So that would have been the first side of old vinyl, double vinyl. Each song is it just takes you away. It's that kind of music. Paints pictures for you. And her voice is the anchor for everything. I mean, the musicianship with the guys in the band, the drumming, the bass work, acoustic guitar, all very good. But if you have to take away Annie Haslam's vocals, just wouldn't be the same. Then you get to side 2, Carpet of the Sun, which is one of my favorite tracks, 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Running Hard, that's 10 minutes. And then Mother Russia, which is one of their biggest hits. I think that was from Turn of the Cards. And it's all about Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Russian writer, and they wrote a song about him and his troubles in Russia and how he was persecuted. The writing is amazing. Great lyrics, excellent storytelling. Then on side 3 is Scheherazade. Now, Scheherazade and Other Stories was the album that was actually going to be released after this live album. So what they did was they showcased a few of the tracks from that forthcoming album, and it really went down well with the crowd because obviously people didn't yet know about the album. They weren't sort of au fait with the tracks. So they do the whole of Scheherazade, which is 28 minutes and 55 seconds. But it's not music that you get bored with because there's these different parts. There's an up-tempo part, a lot of melody, quite melodic, very atmospheric, emotional music. So it keeps your interest for the whole 28 minutes. And then last track on the last side of the record, Ashes Are Burning. And that's 23 minutes and 50 seconds. Also one of the best tracks, which I think, that's the original album there. Ashes Are Burning, so they do the title track. If you can get any of these early 70s Renaissance albums, they did make albums up until I think the 2000s or maybe even a few beyond but the 70s are the ones to go for. As I said, the first two are very different sound, perhaps a bit more psychedelic. But with Annie Haslam joining in and the rest of the guys, John Campen and those guys, they changed the whole sound. And for me, that's essential listening. It is progressive rock, but it's not progressive rock in the vein of King Crimson or Yes or Genesis. These guys had definitely had their own sound. I know I said it the last time when I did the Focus episode. Definitely. And I think mostly because of Annie Haslam's voice. So Ashes Are Burning is the last track. So there we go, Renaissance live at Carnegie Hall. And you know, I struggled for many years to get hold of this. I had all of these before, all the other ones. But to get hold of this, and I knew how great it sounded. And eventually I got my grubby little hands on it. I was really chuffed. And it's worth listening to. The sound is amazing. Even on vinyl. This is an import copy, I think. And in fact, I think in 2019, they re-released this along with a few of the other albums of Renaissance as a bonus edition. So you got like extra tracks, stuff that wasn't on the original, which is actually probably worth getting as well one day when I've won the lotto. There we go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please, if you have, down below, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. And thanks for watching. There are tons of other videos in the channel if you want to check them out. I think I've done well over 100 videos now. So, as I said, the kind of music we play here is rock. I mention is rock, classic rock, blues, metal, progressive rock, and a bit of jazz rock fusion. Have a great week. Take it easy, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.